All right. Hey, everybody. Hey, Colleen, Carlisa, how are you? Matt, how's it going?
I'm fine. How are you? I'm driving, so I'm gonna just mute out.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. Well, all right. It is, you guys are just stuck with me today. Tim is he's in a workshop with a school, so he will not be on with us today, but that's all right. Let me make sure we're recording. Are we recording? We're recording. Okay, good. All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for hopping on. Today's session I think is an interesting one because when you're sitting there, especially, when your marketing admissions team is getting together and you're talking about, okay, we've got to fill some seats, no matter what grades you're in, the question is, how do we do it, right? How do we fill those seats? How do we keep the seats full? How do we really move the needle? Or even again, how do we create a wait list? And when I work with a lot of schools, many times the first thing they come to me with is we need to fill seats, so we need to immediately start advertising. Um, which I get, right? Advertising is an absolute way to get more eyeballs on your school, on your website. And if you do that, naturally you hope, well, more people know about us, more people are on the website. So therefore, more people are going to register for an event or inquire or schedule a tour. And you're not wrong. The question really becomes, is that the problem you have? Is the problem more awareness? For some of you, you might say, yeah, we're tired of being the best kept secret. Um, we need more awareness. Like, okay, let's talk about how do we create more awareness in an efficient way. But what I've seen many times is it goes beyond awareness. We can, the nice part about today's day and age is we can run ads pretty quickly, pretty easily, especially with AI now. We can run ads pretty efficiently. So getting more awareness shouldn't be the issue. But especially if you are running ads and you're still saying to yourself, well, how do we get more? the question becomes, well, what's happening with the rest of your funnel? And that's what I want to talk about today, which is your funnel data and how to dissect your funnel data. And so when we say funnel data, what do we really mean? Well, we mean how many people, it could start with your ads, how many people are visiting your website. Of those that are visiting your website, how many are filling out that inquiry form, how many are scheduling a tour, and then from that, what percentage are converting to applications, and then from applications, how many are converting to acceptances and enrollments. And that's the analysis that you want to be able to look at. And we're going to go through some benchmark data here, but what's most important is that you look at your own data and compare it, because every school is different. um, every school is different, different grade levels, different types of schools, boarding schools, day schools, Montessori schools, doesn't matter. Every school is a little bit different, so the question becomes, what does our data say about our admissions funnel? So that's what we're going to go through today, is how to dissect that admissions funnel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. Um, Share screen. Okay. So for those that are on, if anyone wants to use the chat or unmute, has anybody actually gone through their own admissions data? Has anybody done that?
I attempt to do that every year.
Did you ever find any interesting data? Anything jump out at you from year to year, or this year versus previous years?
Yes, and it's different every year. I'm still learning a lot of new things about it. I collect data. The most recent surprise has been that, over 3 years from being here and collecting good data, um, I, we still have zero confidence that we can predict when families decide to take a look at our school outside of the normal admission cycle. If you split the year up into quarters for the last 3 years, a different quarter has had very heavy traffic, and we don't really know why.
So it's website traffic at different times of the year?
No, I'm talking about direct inquiry traffic for enrollment.
Direct inquiry traffic. Got it. And what's causing it?
That's what we have very low confidence in. We have relative confidence that we'll get a certain number of kids that are coming either for the current year or the next year. We have no confidence in when they will come outside of the normal admission cycle. We have rolling admissions.
Right.
And outside of that quarter that's normal admissions, we've had 3 years and three different quarters have double-digit enrollment.
That's interesting.
It's
Did you ever
very
happen to
interesting.
did you ever happen to ask people, hey, where'd you come from? How'd you learn about us?
We ask that all the time. We're 80% word of mouth or
Right.
driving by the school. Um, we're currently reaching out to this summer. We had double digits and we tried a Zillow ad campaign just targeted at people moving into our area because we know there is a sticker price shock in a good way when people move in because we're much lower than competitors from out of the area.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
and we know that it was seen by some of the people that came, but about half of the double digit were from in town. So it's still difficult to say it was just that.
Interesting.
So I think the biggest thing I learned this year was um, we, we have relative certainty in what we're going to get right now. We have no certainty in when we're going to get it yet.
And where my head's going, I'm like, hey, is that something we could ever track? Right? Are there
Well,
do you
I
have do you have
I
do you have
I
go ahead.
track it because I track when they come on the I track not only how many come on the funnel, but when they come on the funnel, how quickly they
Right.
act, um, how quickly they like to respond to things. And then I get everything I track. I also give a confidence index. So it makes it really easy to talk to my boss and the team when I frame everything in. This is what the data is saying. This is how confident I am in this data. This is how confident I am in what it's telling me. Low confidence means we either need more time or there is no trend.
Hmm. I like that. I like the confidence index. I haven't seen that before, but I think that's a great reporting metric as you're kind of looking at your own funnel data.
And I think I use it as kind of a mental model when I'm talking about data, because I think too often people hear you spout a number or hear you talk some anecdata and they assume it's gospel, when in reality you're sharing what you've learned, but you're really not sure still and why. So the
Right.
mental model of I am or am not confident in what I'm seeing, this is what I would need to be more confident, helps better frame it for people hearing it for the first time so they make better decisions or
Mhm.
don't make a decision as the better decision.
Interesting. By the way, when we're setting up your growth suite system here, we can put that in there. We can put in that confidence index in there. That's a cool idea.
We'll work on it for
Yeah,
sure
we'll work on that.
as I continue to put stuff in.
Yeah, yeah. Let's when we get back together, we'll talk about that.
All right.
That's cool. Anybody else looking at their own funnel data, learning anything? Is anybody not looking at their funnel data?
So this is probably and I've never looked at it, just to be honest.
Hey, no, thank you, and I think this will give some clarity in terms of what to actually look at. And there's
Yeah.
always a lot of different things to look at. We'll try to really break it down to some of the core metrics. So let's start taking a look at it. And I think one of the things that we can look at, and this is data from NAIS from 2024, is now these are broad stroke averages across the country when you look at your admission funnel conversion rates. So you get your top of the funnel inquiries, that's the starting point for many people. And then inquiries translate to applications. Applications will translate to how many of those did you accept? And then from the accepted, how many enrolled? So these are stage by stage conversion rates. And so if you haven't done this before, this can be something to look at and base your data on. Now, ideally, what you want to have is kind of like Matthew, what you were explaining is, hey, I have a 3-year track record, a 5-year track record. Now, 5 years, you start to get into COVID, and COVID, these numbers got all out of whack. So post-COVID, pre-COVID, that's probably where you want to, take a look at your data. But you really want to be able to track these specific metrics of your core stages of your admissions funnel, right? This is why, in our software, one of the first things many schools have set up, hold on, let me pull it over, is one of the first things you see is the funnel data, the step-by-step conversion rate from one step to the next, right? So that you can start tracking this data. Now, the other thing I also like to do, by the way, is there's the next step conversion here, but then the cumulative conversion, right? If we get 100 inquiries, what percentage end up enrolling? That's another interesting piece of data. So not step by step, just how many came in the top of the funnel and then how many can enrolled. Same thing for applications. Even though we look at from stage to stage, you know that, hey, if we get 10 applications, we're going to at least get 3 enrolled, right? Maybe that's some data that you know. But this is a good starting point to have this benchmark data. And depending upon if you look at this data or you look at your own data and you're like, well, no, I mean, our inquiry to application rate is only 20%. And then our application to accepted rate is 40%. Or like, maybe some of you can replace inquiries with tours. So let's call it inquiries and tours. I've had some schools are like, hey, if we can just get more, their tour to application rate was like 70%. Hey, we just need to get more tours. Like, okay. So each one of these data points tells us how we need to improve that particular area. So let's start digging into this. So let me give you the example of, let's say you're running an ad campaign, right? And your goal is, ideally, you want to get enrollments. But really what we want to do is break down our campaign into metrics for each stage. And this can tell us what we need to fix, right? So let's say we run an ad And in that ad, we have an offer, right? Now, the offer can be book a tour, register for an open house, right? Now, what if we're just not getting a lot of awareness over to our landing page, over to our website? So we have maybe low clicks. Now, what would be low clicks? Let me show you something. If your click-through rate is below 1.7%, this is a benchmark average across all the schools that we're tracking, 1.7% click-through rate. What does that tell us? That tells us we have an ad problem. So we need to fix something with our ads. Now, what if we have, we're getting a lot of clicks. Our click-through rate's 2.6%, 3%, 4%, but we're not getting a lot of tours. We're not getting a lot of event registrations. What does that tell us? That tells us we have a landing page problem, right? So that's something we need to fix. Well, let's keep moving this forward. So we're actually going even above the traditional funnel, above the inquiry, which is your ads, your website, then your inquiry. And then what if, maybe if we replace inquiry with event registrations, which maybe the next step is, hey, you need to schedule a visit. What if you have a low visit percentage? Well, then you might have an experience or a follow-up problem, right? So let's say you run an open house event, and then you say, hey, after this open house, fill out an application, or after this open house, why don't you schedule a personal tour, right? And maybe that's redundant. Maybe it's more likely to have the application. Regardless, you just want to lay out this data, and then you say, wow, we have a really low registrant to application rate. What does that mean? Again, it could be follow-up. It could be the experience at the event itself. And then what if after the tours, we have a low enrollment rate? Well, then that's going to be a bigger problem, a culture problem, a process problem. Something is happening there. And I want to lay out why this is so important, because I was working with a school and they were running their ads and they were doing information sessions every single month, virtual information sessions. And what they found was from those virtual information sessions, so they were getting kind of frustrated. They were like, hey, we're just not getting applications. We need to spend more. So do we need to spend more money on ads? Right. So if you're saying, yeah, we're getting some registrations, but man, we're not getting applications, what's going on? Do we need to improve the ads? No, I mean, the short answer may be no. But if you're getting a lot of people to register and you're getting low applications post event, regardless of whether it's virtual, in person, whatever it might be, like their conversion rate was less than 25%. They have a problem with that event. That event is not doing well to convince families to take the next step. So that's why I bring this up, because you really want to identify what's the constraint and then go all in on fixing that constraint. If anybody remembers, let me see if I can pull this up real quick. If anybody remembers or have seen where I talk about the family journey, let me see if this will pull up while we're waiting for that to load up. When I talk about the family journey, that's where we identify, what are all the steps families take to ultimately get to your school. And then if you look at your journey, so let's go back to this. Right, so we look at the family journey. Let me do the big at the end. So here's the family journey. Everything's running very slow at the moment. Yeah, Matthew, I just saw your message. Yes, I could send these slides out. Here's the family journey, right? They become aware that you exist. They search on Google. They look at your website. They talk to friends and family. They look at the review sites. They eventually come back to your website to convert, the conversion point, which is booking a tour, coming to an event, whatever it might be, right? There's a lot here. The question becomes, what do we prioritize? In all of these marketing and mission efforts, what do we prioritize? And you typically want to prioritize you typically want to prioritize the conversion point. What's the point at which they're going to make a decision? Because if we can run ads all day long, but if they're falling through some sort of cracks in the system, we need to fix the system first before we send more people through it. Same thing here, right? If this is our system, if this is our campaign, you can run you can run ads all day long, but if you have a very low application rate post tour or post event, you need to fix the event experience first before you go run more ads or throw more money at the problem. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody in terms of how we're looking at this data. So let me share with you just some metrics. Again, we'll talk a little bit about advertising. How do you know if your advertising is working? With Meta, the average cost per click is about $1.60. The click-through rate is about 1.7%. Another metric that I should probably put on here, maybe we'll talk about it, is what is the cost per conversion? Now, every type of conversion has a different rate, but that's also a very important metric, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So let's start at the top of the funnel, which is how do you know your meta ads are running well? Well, these are ultimately some of the ad metrics you want to look at, right? I've seen campaigns where they're like 1%, 1.2%, 0.8%. That tells you that your ads are they're not getting the engagement that they should. Now let's look at Google ads. What if you run Google ads? Typically a 2.8% click-through rate. These are more expensive, about $2.97 of what we're seeing across the education space. Right? I've seen some Google ads crush it, upwards of 10, 11%. I've also seen cost per click numbers go very, very high. Now, I will tell you, you aren't in complete control of that cost per click number. You have a little bit more control sometimes on the Facebook side, but a lot of this has to also do with competition. So the two major factors when you're running Google ads are the quality score, how well is your ad being received. So like if your click-through rates are very low, then usually your costs go up because your maybe the quality of your ads is not great, so your costs go up. But the other thing that can play a major role is the competition, right? As we all know, if you go to Google private schools near me, there's going to be potentially 2, 3, 4 other schools advertising. Now, if you don't see anybody advertising, that's probably low competition, lower cost per click. Higher competition, typically higher cost per click because other people are bidding for that spot, right? Or bidding for that keyword. Okay, but on average, let's just use this as a benchmark, right? So if you want to improve your campaigns, this is one of the first places to look. Are your ads performing? Now, let me add a slide in here. We'll do this on the fly. This is a very, very important metric, cost per conversion. So when you really want to identify how to improve your top of the funnel, especially, how do we get more registrations? How do we get more tours? Or not necessarily how to, but what does it cost us to get that? Typically what I'm seeing right now is event registrations anywhere from $25 to $65 cost per registration. Okay. Now what else? Tours. Tours are going to be more expensive. Typically 75, upwards of 150 cost per tour. Something I'm seeing doing very well is like a request for a call, more information. That's at about $25 to $40, right? So what does this tell us? This tells us, one, do we have an ad problem if you're running ads? How much does it cost us to get somebody to take an action? If it's an event, if it's costing you like $100 to get an event registration, you probably have an ad or a landing page issue, right? So here's some of the things that we can look at. Right now, again, going back to this, ads and landing pages, that determines what your cost is. So if your ads are doing well, but your cost per landing page visit is not doing as well, then you have a landing page problem. All right. So I know some other folks have joined us as we were going through. For those that have joined recently in the past, 10, 15 minutes or so, um, has anybody done the exercise where you go through your enrollment data? Oops. Feel free to chat, unmute. A quiet group today.
I
Okay,
will
what was the
say
question?
just
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I will say just to keep things going, I keep a lot of admissions data. I have not been able to parcel out the cost per thing, so I'm really excited to start doing that.
Yeah, that it's a great metric to have. Obviously, you have to set some tracking up to do that. That's one of the things we'll be able to do with the software. Yeah, what is your cost per registration? What is your cost per tour? Then you know exactly how you need to budget. And once you know how you need to budget, then you can decide, hey, should we or shouldn't we invest our money in these particular areas? Maybe we're investing too much, maybe too little, right? Because I always get asked the question, um, hey, I've got $500. Is that enough? Should I spend more? The question is, I don't really know if that's enough, but we can use some benchmark data to determine what you can expect, and then you can determine, is that enough, right? So if you said, hey, I have $500 for this admissions campaign, or maybe for this open house campaign, all right, so you have 500 bucks, and let's just say it's going to cost you $50 per registration. You're going to get 10 additional registrations from those ads. How do you feel about that? Is that a good number? Not a good number? So these are very, very important numbers to track. But then, like I said, once you're doing these tours, it's really important to determine what is your conversion rate from tour to application, application to acceptance, acceptance to enrollment. And each one of those numbers tells you a different story. Let me share some other, I'm going to share some marketing metrics with you. Let me go back to this. I get asked a lot about social media. We're all posting on social media, some more than others. I get the question, how much should we post? What's the average engagement rate? Um, so on average, you want to try to be posting 21 times per month on Facebook and Instagram as your primary drivers. 21 times per month. Some of you might look at that and be like, yep, no problem. That's what we're doing. Others may look at that and be like, I have no idea how I'm ever going to be able to do that.
That's me. That's me.
And look, there are strategies, right? There's things to be able to do to help improve that frequency. The thing is with social media these days, on one end, it's like you can't really post enough. You could post 2, 3 times a day, and that wouldn't necessarily be enough. Because of how these algorithms are working these days. And we only see when you post on your platforms, people only see maybe, I don't know what's the best way to put this, only about 2 to 5% of what you post is actually seen by your followers. However, that algorithm now has changed on social media, where it is less about how many followers you have. It's more about, are you posting content that people are interested in, so that you can get found by people, even if they're not your followers. Your followers will still see it. But if somebody moves into your area and they start searching for private schools, it's as much easier now to get found than it ever was before. So that's why we want to post a lot. Now, to do two things: reinforce the value proposition for your existing families, while also increasing the opportunity to get found by prospective families as well. So when we have 21, that's what schools are doing on average. So if you're not posting that amount, you can consider yourself kind of below the average, right? Consider yourself below the average. On the left-hand side, actually, I think I need to update these. These were from a year or so ago. Engagement rates. So you can use a tool. I mean, you can use a tool like ours, where we have a social media planner that can give you these engagement rates. What is the engagement rate, and what does engagement mean? Likes, shares, and comments per post. TikTok continues to have the highest engagement rate of close to 5%. Instagram is at 1.4%. Facebook engagement rate is at 0.13%. So it's super low on Facebook. That doesn't mean you should stop posting on Facebook. Continue to post on Facebook, because most families are still there as well, as weird as that might sound. But Instagram, Facebook being your two primary ones. I think schools are still kind of coming around to TikTok. More and more schools are doing that now. But this just starts to give you some data about how to, like, are you posting enough? Should you be posting more? Social media posts, on average, about 21. Now, how to do that, different discussion, different day. Always happy to have this discussion with you. But ultimately, that's what you want to be posting. So as we go back, what I would highly recommend that you do, if you haven't done this already, so today might be a short session, but I think the most important thing that you can do is start looking at your funnel data. Lay out your funnel like this. Top of the funnel, inquiries, then applications accepted, enrolled. Now, I know that there's stages in between there, and you can put those in, but you really want to look at your core stages. And then even above inquiries, that's where we have your ads and your website visits. Okay. So do this first. Next step, look back at least 3 years to look to see how these numbers have fluctuated. And if you notice that one of these numbers starts to go way off, maybe all of a sudden your application rate is really low compared to your previous few years, the question is why? Why is that happening? Right? And then we have to look at other things. Are we getting less people at the inquiry stage? Are we advertising less? Like, what is contributing to the lower application rate? Is there a process problem, a follow-up problem? So those are the things to help to identify. All right. Well, folks, today might be a short session. Any questions before we hop off today?
So I have some homework to do tonight.
Always seems like there's homework. Yeah, I mean, looking at your funnel data, looking at your
Goodness.
funnel data is a good metric. Is just a good thing to do, and you really only need to do it, a couple times a year, to really see how these numbers are shaking out.
Okay.
But yeah, if you haven't done it yet, start to do this. If you don't have this data yet, start to put it together. And then you can use this data as your benchmark that comes from NAIS.
Okay.
Well, all right, everybody. Thanks for hopping on. We'll keep this session short, and we'll see you for our next We've got a webinar coming up on Thursday, so keep an eye on your invite on your email for that invite. And then we've got our next session, next webcast next Tuesday. All right, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.